Factoids listeners. It's us, the not-so-giant women. Daria and Ivy are here to tackle Garnets Universe. So that's a title.
Yeah.
Oh,
Reminds me of how many people think the show is called Steven's Universe, so might be right on that.
Right, like it's a possessive. Yeah, I've definitely seen that. It's like the same people who call Pokemon Pokemans. You know, I was really excited when I was watching Steven Universe for the first time, watching season 1, and I saw in the lineup a episode called Garnets Universe. So I'm like, I want to know more about Garnet. I hope this is a Garnet episode. So I didn't see how it couldn't be, So, kind of like the more we focus on Pearl and Amethyst and stuff, it sort of makes it even more obvious how little we know about her. So, any thoughts on the title before we go in?
I've kind of taken a guess. It's what she gets up to when the others aren't around, or we the viewers aren't around. What Garnet's universe is like when it's not battling and bubbling corrupted gems.
Yeah. So I guess let's see what we're dealing with.
We are the crystal gems. We'll always save the day. And that's what you did today.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened.
Really?
No.
Well, we sort of get a day in the life of Garnet. It's maybe not necessarily an accurate one.
It was cute as hell.
Oh, yeah. Okay, let's see if I can cover this because it's all a bit weird.
Just a little.
Garnet warps back into what appears to be an empty beach house, calls for Stephen. He is not there, but as she looks around, hears him giggling and smiles as she is not so above at all. He is hiding in the rafters, jumps down, bounces on her hair and covers her eyes with a bit of a gotcha. And he notes, oh no, tiny hands, my only weakness.
So cute.
So it's obviously a bit of a routine they have, or she'll indulge in his play like this. Stephen asks what she's been up to. She asks what he thinks she's been up to. And we go into a title screen for Garnets Universe by Steven Universe. And then suddenly we see Garnet warp into a world of chiptunes and simplified animations. She walks into a forest and is first set on by a bomber and a samurai rabbit thing. Defeats these. It turns out these are her friends Hopper the frog and Hoppy the rabbit. They are, in fact, training her. They are particularly obsessed with training, and Hopper has a little tricorder thing which measures Garnet's power levels in all kinds of strange and obtuse manners. They soon come across a person who looks pretty much like Ronaldo, except instead of fries for hair, he appears to have an onion ring for hair. Not Ronaldo, whose name I'm blanking on, explains that he was the keeper of a shrine with a gem of ultimate power within, and he was just one day innocently keeping a shrine when a foxman came along, asked to see the shrine, stole the gem, turned into a hyper-muscly, beefy foxman, and kicked him out of his own shrine. Garnet vows to restore Not Ronaldo to his shrine, and she, the animals, and Not Ronaldo go to the shrine to have a bit of a tussle with... No, they don't go straight to the shrine. We need a training montage with sitting under waterfalls and weighted gauntlets and power levels being measured in Hopper's tricorder thing. Go back to the shrine and defeat the fox guy with a huge mega gauntleted punch, except turns out the fox guy actually is the rightful shrine keeper. It's not Ronaldo who is the bad guy trying to take the gem of ultimate power. Ringo, that's his name, because he's obsessed with onion rings. Ringo gets the gem and similarly becomes huge and beefy and is now Ultimate Ringo. Ultimate Ringo turns the fox into a giant onion ring of a tail and kicks our heroes away. They realize they have to set right what once went wrong, and more training, more weighted, huge gauntlets, power levels off the charts. They come to take on Ringo, but he is ever so powerful, takes everyone into his Ringo zone, which is a blue and purple tinted realm with rings floating around everywhere. You make short work of Hoppy and Hopper, and Garnet does what probably most of the viewership are doing and gets their names mixed up. So if their friend can't get their names right, what hope do we have? Garnet launched into combat, but after a few rounds reveals not only has she had weighted gauntlets, she had weighted hair as she removes her hair like one complete Lego piece and goes into fighting against Ultimate Ringo, eventually powering up to this hyper gauntlet powered all purple glowing thing. This is what triggered by Ringo taking and eating Garnet's photograph of Stephen that she's been staring at wistfully all through this adventure. After he eats the photograph by turning it into an onion ring, of course, Garnet's hyper powers up into a glowing purple fist behemoth and smashes him, retrieves the gem, abandons him to the Ringo zone. He's now just been turned back into regular Ringo, restores the fox, and goes back home to Stephen, who recaps, and then she came home and then she was blind, and that's where we are now. Garnet says, yes, that's pretty much what happened. What Stephen says, really? No. And we go. So I tangled that one up a bit, but that's the basics of Garnets Universe, the story by Stephen Universe.
So at the end of the day, we really still don't know what the heck she does all day.
No, she did have a bubble gem, but for all we know, she just found it lying in the path.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess the big takeaway is the fact that Stephen really wants to think that Garnet is thinking about him a lot. And, you know, he's writing himself into her stories as his motivation.
Yes, all through. And I kind of glossed over this. A simplified Garnet on her adventure is taking a photograph of Stephen and herself out of her pocket and looking at it and describing him as her favorite person in the whole world, and various moments like this. And here's what she's fighting for and all these moments like that.
Yeah, just it's cute, but it's, you know, I think that's the big important thing we learn in this episode, because I mean, it is basically non-canon. It's a story Stephen made up, but what we learn, I guess, is that you know, he apparently has not heard her confirm that she loves him. And it seems like maybe he's wondering, does she like me? Does she care about me? So, you know, that whole back and forth with the Hoppy and Hopper and stuff. Who is that? Oh, my most favorite person in the world. Well, have you ever told him that? No, I'm not strong enough. Like, there's a reason she's not saying. There has to be some reason, because obviously she loves me. But it's like kind of a little bit sad to think he's wondered why she hasn't said it.
Yeah. And that fits into both this episode's theme of increasing strength and being strong in the real way from a few episodes back. So
that's true.
So some of that obviously stuck with him.
Yeah. Really love the beginning of this episode with how she's just very warm and encouraging.
Yeah, that sort of half smile as she knows perfectly well where Stephen is, but she's going to play the let him sneak up on her game.
Jumping onto her hair, yelling, Stephen Bomb, bouncing around like it's a mattress.
We didn't see the other two gems, but unless my ear tricks me, their voices were Hoppy and Hopper.
That is correct.
It very much came out in Hoppy, and once I'd sort of twigged onto that, I sort of trained my ear onto Hopper as well as like, I see what we've done here.
Yeah, I think they almost kind of switched the personalities up a little bit, though. Like, well, I mean, not exactly, but the one that's very serious about training and swinging a sword around is the one voiced by Amethyst's voice actress. So.
Yeah, and I didn't notice that until she was calling out, as Amethyst tends to do, and that's what started to tweak it into place for me.
Yeah.
And unless I missed my guess because I was in eagle-eared mode by this point, that sounds like Zach doing the grown-up narrator voice toward the end, probably closer to his real voice than his Stephen voice.
Yeah, I believe so. He was, I don't know what the direction was there, but it was quite a contrast from, you know, he's doing this movie voiceover and then he cuts back to his, and then I got you and you were blind.
He's probably imagining himself able to do good narration.
Yeah.
That was a bit of a guess, again, just because of the other voice reuse, and when it went straight from narrator to regular Steve, it's like, I can just detect some similarity on the edges here, so this could be it.
What about the other one you didn't mention, the voice of the Fox Man? Did you recognize that one?
No, didn't quite get that, but partly because he didn't talk much.
It's Lars's voice actor.
Oh, okay.
They really don't do very different voices. Like for the guy who does Ronaldo, Zachary Steele, and the guy who does Lars, who's Matthew Moy. They didn't change their voices very much for these characters, whereas the other two kind of, you know, Dee Dee doing, you know, the frog and Michaela doing the bunny. it seemed like they were trying to do something different, but it was still recognizable, whereas the other two were just talking like they talk.
Ringo basically was Ronaldo, so took no nutting out that one.
Instead of a Fry guy, but I don't know, I just never thought like, wow. Of course I noticed the Fry hair, but I'm saying the juxtaposition there never quite occurred to me.
Yeah, at first I thought it was a donut, and then they just kept saying onion rings, so I was like, oh, that's okay. It's like one fried food to the left.
Right. It was perfect place to stick the gem once he won it. Stuck it in there. A little ring in his hair.
It shows Stephen handling foreshadowing in his story.
Yeah. Although I was a little bit impressed that at least he didn't do like the kind of overused trope of the trickster fox. Like it was actually the other person who was the trickster. So that was nice.
Yeah, no, you often see tricky and sneaky foxes, or, to outfox someone is to...
Yeah.
I don't know the other word for outfox, but that kind of illustrates it.
Yeah. So that's kind of creative. A lot of video gamey tropes and a lot of, I don't know, what would you call that? The fighting animes for boys that are aimed at little kids, where everything's about power levels and trying to level up to beat the next bad guy. Like it really had those vibes.
Yeah, it was very much you trained for X hours, now you are this much more powerful, which is a very video game thing. And I'm only kind of aware of the particular anime subgenre of which you speak, but I know that's a thing in them too. Yeah,
like a shonen anime, I think is the name of it. But like, I guess it was really it's explicitly very video gamey, because I've even though I don't play video games, I know that there's like a way to, I guess I think it's called grinding. Probably people are going to laugh at me for being like, I think it's this technical term. This weird old lady is trying to say video game terms that she really doesn't understand. I've heard of grinding, where you just like beat up on smaller enemies to safely get higher levels or level up or whatever else.
That's grinding as
is it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's so I'm using it right. Okay, I have I'm nerd adjacent in many respects without being a video game nerd myself. So they'll grind on smaller enemies, or punch a mountain where it poses no danger to them, but it increases their power. And like Garnet standing in a waterfall and swinging her big fists around to try to get 10 power every time she punches the air. It's like that's very like she's just playing a video game, which went very well with the aesthetic as well.
Yeah, well, the music was spot on for that.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, Stephen himself is usually accompanied by chiptunes, but not to that extent. Like this was a teleportation right into his brain. It was so cute. Although this is not a fan favorite episode. This is like a lot of people tell you to skip it. I guess just because once you know what happens, it's like, not an important episode because it's just Stephen fantasizing. But I thought it was cute.
Yeah, it was kind of fun. I mean, I see in terms, I would take a guess rather, because I haven't seen past this point. So I'm taking a guess that Hoppy and Hopper and Ringo don't all turn up next week. But...
Wouldn't it be funny if they really did have Hoppy and Hopper in her room somewhere?
I can see how some of the fans of particular views would go, this just kind of doesn't build the world or advance the overall plot at all. So, you can leave it aside.
Yeah, I mean, and you and I have talked about how we consider the in-betweeny and character building episodes to be as important. So, I mean, to me, it's the main contribution for this is like, we now know that Stephen does think about this and he wonders like whether he's important to Garnet, whether he's a priority in her life, whether she has a reason that she's not saying that she loves him and seems distant, I guess. He wants to play with her. He wants to eat together breakfast with her. He wants to spend time with her, but she's off doing her own thing so much.
Yeah, and every so often you just kind of need a breather episode from the main plot with no lapises turning up, no revelations about who can go to which planet or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And even though I guess it wasn't like a hugely plot-specific episode, the one we watched right before this showed us a three-way fusion. So, that was kind of a big deal. Oh, we just met Alexandrite. So I think we can have a little downtime.
Yeah. And I guess someone at the Crewniverse just wants to mess with Ronaldo or people who look just like him.
Yeah. wonder if maybe this was one of those things where, you know how if you're some kind of artist, you're like, oh, I hope one day I get to be part of like this kind of production where we get to do a song like this or an episode like this or write a comic like this. Like, I wonder if anybody had it in their heads, like, I hope I get to maybe I could pitch a video game version of the characters for some reason, you know?
Finding a way to make it fit.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of them are just, we've talked about this a little bit in interviews where it's everybody's goals. They're like contributions from everyone of like, what have you always wanted to make? So that it'll feel personal, you know, and then it's authentic.
In retrospect, I think I was half expecting a kind of adventuring song, but obviously we didn't get one.
Yeah, no adventuring song, sad.
Isn't usually Garnet's bag to trigger off, but it's Garnet in Stephen's Story, and we know he likes to do the music, so...
This is true. Yeah. Just thinking about kind of the logistics of the storytelling. So he jumps out of the rafters, he lands on her hair, she picks him up and holds him, and proposes, tell me what you think I did. And he tells the whole story. And then when you cut back to him, he's still just being held by her. She's been standing there holding him like this the entire time. Like that is so cute to me. Like just thinking of, she's just standing there holding him and she would stand there forever like Meat Beat Mania, you know, she'll just listen and listen and listen until he's done.
And he's fine with that because he's just indulging and telling his story.
Oh, it's cute. Like, it's a really good mixture between very obviously influenced by the media in his life and creativity. I like it. It felt authentic for a kid to be telling a story like that about someone he loves.
I kind of wonder, is this something that's been boiling away in his mind for a while, or did he just go stream of consciousness as soon as she said, what do you think I did?
Going back to Tiger Millionaire, I think he can make up stories on the spot. I also love the idea that he's wondering about, you know, maybe what does Garnet get up to? And he's like, oh, she's mysterious. What could it be? Secret animal friends. Whoops. That was loud.
Yeah, well, for some reason, that particular line, he's not ready to know I have secret animal friends.
Yes. That's so funny. He's not ready for that. Oh, so.
Speaking of whom, Hoppy looks a lot like Usagi from Usagi Yojimbo.
Yes, she does.
Had to lose an eye to look that little bit more different to get away with it.
Yeah, I think the frog might be a Chrono Trigger reference.
Chrono Trigger, I don't know so much.
Yeah, I don't either, but I've just heard it from people who are nerdier than me.
Yeah, well, I mostly know Usagi from when he turns up in Ninja Turtles. So.
Oh, well, there you go. Makes sense. Let's see. What else is there about this? I mean, I know it's not a deep episode, but so I think the way that they drew the simplified version of Garnet, I think is kind of like her distance model.
That was my first thought too. Maybe with a bit more detail to make it easier to handle close-ups. Sometimes she had a nose and sometimes she didn't.
Yeah, I think most of the time she didn't. And when she would have one for a detail shot or something, it would be standing out in a different style. So did you notice that when they approach the Fox Guardian, he's sitting there looking at Tumblr?
Well, I didn't know it was Tumblr per se, but I noticed what he was doing. And
yeah, he's sitting there scrolling through cat pictures on his phone. That's just so funny to me. This guy's guarding. He's looking at the internet.
Well, there's another site, and there's probably a few of them by now, which is basically hot or not for cats.
Oh, yes.
So that's what it made me think of. So of course, the Croonabirds had to slip their cats in there somehow.
Yeah, that's true. It's not a full episode of the series. It's not a true episode of the series if it doesn't have a cat reference.
And I wouldn't be surprised if those are like rough drawings of someone's particular cats or something. It certainly would be if I was doing this episode. That'd be my cats and my friend's cats on it.
Like when Garnet got the names mixed up when she's calling out, Hopper, no, Hoppy, I mean Hopper. So funny.
Which was pretty much what I was wondering if I was going to do all through the explanation, get Hopper and Hoppy mixed up.
You know, I was impressed that you didn't, and then we got to not Ronaldo, and I was like, that's the name that you didn't know. And you remembered it halfway through, but I was like, wow, you told the Hoppers apart.
That was just a mental snag.
And probably doesn't help that he looks and acts and sounds exactly like Ronaldo.
Yeah.
So we already know you. Go away. We already spent plenty of time with you, 2 episodes.
So is that why I turn up in
It's not
Stephen's
him,
stories?
ostensibly.
Stephen's still slightly scarred from his experience being kidnapped as a Snurson and has unconsciously cast Ronaldo as a bad guy.
That might be why. I don't think I've thought of that, but that could definitely be why. Like, oh, well, I'm going to blow off some of my steam in a completely non-violent and harmless way by making him be the villain in my story.
And imagining my friend beating him up with her enormous gauntlet hands.
Leaving him in the Ringo zone forever. It probably did not escape your attention that there were a lot of references to, I guess, Dragon Ball in there, which is appropriate because that show also has fusion.
Yeah, I don't know Dragon Ball so well, but I was able to recognize, oh, this is kind of riffing on this thing. And I'm sure I'd recognize more if I knew the show better.
Yeah, that's not one that I watch either, but the things that I knew about it is like that they also have fusion, and there's that thing about over 9,000 that became a huge meme, power levels over 9,000. And so when the power level went straight from 8,000 to 10,000, that was really funny.
I think actually that knowing that show had fusion of some kind distracted me from the idea that there was fusion in this show before I actually found it out. Because I meant any talk of fusion on the edge of my perception, my brain just reascribed to Dragon Ball Z. So that made sure the fusion in this show was more of a surprise when it actually appeared.
I've seen fan art of characters doing the Dragon Fusion dance, but they do fan art with Steven Universe characters doing it, which is funny. The dance is very, very different, but their fusions are like, I guess they combine, do they combine the names of them? I think they do. They combine their names together. They don't have like a whole new name, and they also have both of their voices overlapping, like this double voice going on. So whereas our fusions get their own voices because they're special.
And so their own looks and names and personalities.
Yeah, I don't really know very much about it. Oh yeah, the other thing is the hair changes, I guess, when they go Super Saiyan. And there was definitely that going on in this fight scene where Garnet took her hair off and then she grew like bigger, different hair.
The squarest of square hair.
That was so funny that like the weighted gauntlets was one thing, but then weighted hair that she just takes this brick off of her head and drops it on the ground, and it's so heavy it cracks the floor. It's like, really? You were just bouncing on that hair, Stephen.
Yeah, and as I said in the summary, it very much reminds me of how Lego heads work, that the hair just comes off in one piece. And in fact, her head afterwards was kind of shaped like a Lego minifig's head.
She completely looked like a Lego person. They've actually talked about, just in general, Garnet is sort of action figure-y looking. Just the way that her body parts connect together is very geometric. And the way that she moves and stuff is very Lego person.
It wouldn't be hard to do a build-a-figure of Garnet.
Yeah, I think you're right. I wonder, like, some of the things that he stuck into his imagining of her, like the being able to take her hair off, or that she pulled a water bottle out of her hair, or that she can make gigantic gauntlets like that. Like, I wonder if those are things that he just made up for fun, or if he has wondered about, like, can she do that? If there are theories about her that he has, like about her secret animal friends. So funny.
Yeah. He lacks facts. He must feel them in himself.
Mm-hmm. I mean, she was the one that said, "Tell me what you think I did." Incidentally, since there's not a whole lot to talk about in this episode and it's Garnet related, I might as well bring this up at this point. The way that she prompted him to talk about it is, "Tell me what you think I did." She didn't ask him. She said it like a statement. And that is a thing that they do with Garnet. They have her, any information that she seeks or questions she's asking, she says them as statements. She does not ever ask questions.
Oh, okay. I'll have to keep an ear out for that. That
is a very interesting way to suggest a character is trying to come across very confident, or is very confident, that they never ask questions. I mean, it's my first inclination is to think, if you can't ask questions, that's a bit of maybe a character flaw. But at the same time, like, it's not that she won't ask for information. She'll just phrase it as a statement, almost like even as a command, essentially. And that, I have to admit, I learned this from watching this show, is that you can do that with people who are being evasive or people who are not listening to you. And I tried doing it at work one time. And it worked really well where somebody was just not, I was on a time sensitive task and this person wouldn't give me the information I needed. And so I just went up to them and I said, I need you to do this. And I need you to tell me that. And like, they answered like that. And I'm like, this works. I'm going to start talking like Garnet. It does work. I don't know how effective long-term it would be in all situations, but definitely was useful there.
And in Garnet's case, she usually has the other three around her and she can sit back and listen to what they're going to dig out by being more chattery and questioning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like the way that it plays out, that it comes out without you specifically saying like, this is the way that they write her scripts. It's not something that you necessarily notice straight up. And I didn't notice it organically. I read an interview where they said this in like 2015 and they're like, yeah, by the way, Garnet doesn't ask questions. And I'm like, oh, really now? Being the massive nerd that I am, I've listened for it in rewatches and there technically are a few places where she says something that could be a question. But you could argue that it wasn't, like laser light cannon when she picks up Amethyst to throw her at the red eye. She asks her if she's ready. But you could also say, is she saying ready or is she saying ready? You know,
I think
I
think also when you look at the myriad circumstance she could find herself in, it's something that's sooner or later she's going to just have to ask an actual question just to move on. So I think a lot of these things, I've heard it with some other things from other characters, it's that they usually don't say a given thing or talk in a given way, but it's not supposed to be a concrete rule that will break the series if they ever do veer into that or circumstance.
Right. It would mostly just kind of fly under the radar, but the whole purpose of it is to have her speech be very authoritative. And it is a speech pattern. It's not necessarily a limit to how she can ask for information. It's just it's part of how she talks.
Yeah. And everyone even in real life who's got a speech trait like that has to break it sooner or later, even if they're not aware they're doing it or breaking it, come to that.
Right. I think the clearest one I can think of in the early series was in Cheeseburger Backpack. They're encouraging him to take stuff out of his backpack, and Garnet says, "What have you got?" That is a question. There's a few others, but for the most part, yeah, she just turns questions around. You know, like when she asked Amethyst to fuse with her, she said, "Amethyst, fuse with me." Like, she's asking, but she's kind of not.
Well, even leading up to that, she didn't say, "What can we do?" She just said, "We need to be big."
Mm-hmm. Right. And then in this episode, that she's asking Steven to tell her something, but she just says, "Tell me, blah, blah, blah." And it usually doesn't stick out as, oh, she's using words weirdly to avoid speaking naturally. Like, it doesn't feel like that when she talks. But the people who write the scripts have said that sometimes it's hard to work around. So they're doing a good job if we haven't really noticed.
Yeah.
And I guess it helps that Garnet doesn't usually have that many lines.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. It doesn't stand out that she talks unusually if she doesn't actually talk.
Yeah, right. And any like stiltedness or awkwardness could just be, well, that's Garnet. I have a weird anecdote about this one. My mom once accidentally saw this episode on TV. And of course, my mom knows that this is my favorite show. And so there have been a couple of times where she just accidentally ran into the show on TV and she was surprised that, I guess for some reason, she thought it was an old show. She didn't know it was actively airing. So she caught it on TV and she's like, "This is my daughter's show." And I was like, "Oh, well, which one was it?" And she's like, "Oh, I don't really know, but I didn't like how the animation was very stilted and they did that thing like they do in the Japanese cartoons where the mouths just don't really match." And I'm like, that doesn't sound right. Are you sure that you saw the cartoon that I watch? Because that's not a thing. That's not how the cartoon is. And she's like, "Well, they said it was Garnet Universe." And I'm like, "Oh, you saw this one. That's different. That's not how the animation usually is, I promise." My mom is funny that way. She did once misremember Steven's name and called it Bruce Universe. I'm like, what? I was impressed that she remembered the Garnet part. Imagine seeing this out of context, right?
Yeah, I mean, this would not be the one you show to someone to get them into the show.
Definitely not. Even though it's a cute episode for what it is not representative of what else you're likely to see.
So I have trouble. My favorite episode of modern Doctor Who is useless for introducing people because it's actually the middle of a trilogy.
Oh.
So you'd have to give too much setup as to why this is good and why this fits in so well. So
yeah. So it's one of those things where it is as good as it is only with context?
Partly, and partly just because the story leads into it. So you'd have to really set up a whole why are we here sort of thing.
Oh. What episode is that for the listeners who are fans?
Oh, sorry. That's Heaven Sent.
Okay. I mean, I have no idea, but I'm sure I'll get some comments. Seem to be some Doctor Who fans out there.
Awesome.
Yeah. Get the odd comment about it. Yeah. The question of which episode of Steven Universe to show to people first to enter to try to get them hooked because of the popular opinion that the beginning of the show isn't a good place to start. I mean, I completely disagree, but I understand why a lot of people feel like this is too slow or that the thing that's so good about this show takes a while to get to. And so there are arguments over which episode should I just show them out of context. And so many of the ones that are just gut punches and are so fantastic, they only work with context. They only work with, I even feel like, the Lapis duo there, the 2 episodes they're fantastic episodes, but I feel like they wouldn't even be that good if you weren't kind of dazzled by the idea, like there's a new gem, like that's huge, but it's not huge if everybody's a new gem to you.
Well, yeah. And even listening back to earlier episodes of this show, you can hear younger me going, maybe these are the only 3 gems left in the whole universe. And so it's a revelation that this is not the case. And so now I'd be less surprised if another gem I'd be surprised that a particular gem turned up, but I would be less surprised that there is another gem at all by this point. But
right.
you'd need that context to be those 2 episodes where you cross that barrier into there are other gems out there.
Mm-hmm. Right. And not only that, but they're going to have some attitude toward our heroes that we have no context for.
Yeah. It opens a potential whole other door to a whole other story dimension, if you will.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think people kind of underestimate that when they're used to the idea of the show too. And they kind of don't understand it, especially if they're the kind of person who, like you were saying earlier, just dubs everything filler or dubs everything as an unimportant episode because it wasn't plot heavy. And it's like, well, I mean, okay, the episode so an indirect kiss introduces something very important, which is the concept of healing. So we know that that's a very important one. But, if you just back up a few episodes before that and you have stuff that's kind of leading up to Connie and Steven's relationship, why he would be confiding in her and stuff. Okay, yeah, we see him running around with Lion and trying to go to the movies with Connie and stuff. It's like none of this would feel organic or built toward or even earned if some stuff that wasn't necessarily all that plot heavy.
Yeah, and
even the Ronaldo episode.
And what I can tell from where we are right now is that the first half season of the show, I mean, it's kind of a different format because you're dealing with Gem Monster of the Week, but it is a viable format in and of itself. So now I know that they introduce a whole new world of potential with other gems and Lapis and where the galaxy warp may or may not lead to and space and all that. But if you hadn't hit that point, you could still carry on and tell stories that are basically in the manner of the first season. And, it could have veered off in the direction that these were the last 3 gems in the universe. And that could be the story. So I think it's also fairly dismissive of not just of the context, but of those first 20-something episodes are actually a good show in themselves. Keeping in mind, they thought for a while that could be all the show was. That all anyone would know of Steven Universe would be characters and Gem Monster of the Week without a bigger plot off in space somewhere. And the reason I kept going for more seasons is because people watched and liked that show that existed for 26 episodes or 24, really, because once Lapis arrives, that's really what uncorks the bottle. So it's a perfectly fine show, and it's just, I think, dismisses many enjoyable episodes just to only see them in terms of what happens later.
Yeah, if you were to kind of write out the very important plot beats, there would be a lot of episodes that you could skip if they didn't have a plot beat in them. But, then like you said with your Doctor Who episode, it's like you would have to set up, oh, there was this episode where they found this thing, or there was this episode where they went to this place. This isn't the first time they went to this place or whatever. So it would be like you didn't really have an organic understanding of what it felt like to know these characters or see them interact. There's so much you're absorbing by watching them just be around each other. And to be honest, I think that the biggest fans of things are people who get invested in the characters. They all feel like they're important people in their lives almost. So you need time. You need to give that time. Plus, it's an 11-minute cartoon. Like, what are you going to really lose if you watch a Garnets Universe once in a while?
Yeah, I mean, if you were on a dedicated binge, you could knock off the entire first season in like a day.
Oh, I did.
There you go.
I think it was 2 days for me, but I was working. I remember that I had been sent into the field, which is something that does not happen very much at my job. And I had to count cars studying an intersection. And it was not a very busy intersection. So they didn't want to spend the money to hire some firm to put, counters out there where you drive over the wires and it counts them. So they just had me and somebody else at a different intersection just sitting there in a chair all day long counting cars and deciding what they did. And I had just started watching Steven Universe like the night before. And I was sitting there counting these cars and just thinking about it. I'm like, I want to go home and watch cartoons.
I remember they had us do that in stats class.
They did? Counting cars?
Yeah, counting cars and which types of cars were going through a given intersection as well, and so how many, and can you draw meaningful information from this, etc., etc.
I remember I was wearing a shirt from that old Homestar Runner web thing. I was wearing a Teen Girl Squad shirt, and I couldn't believe, because this is old school stuff by this point, that it's old for being internet stuff. I'm wearing a shirt from Homestar Runner, and one of the pedestrians that I counted on my sheet walked by wearing a Strong Bad shirt. And I was like, what are the chances? That is so weird. So other cartoons came into my life that day too. So.
But in fact, I binged all of season 1. Well, this is when I dozed off during, but because I was ill. But I left that to doze off to while I was ill, and it wasn't actually that long. But just going back to what you said about these only being 10 or 11-minute length cartoons, that it's easy to get through the whole lot if you're trying to get someone to rebuild that world.
Yeah.
I would think you could easily do that. The most you have to say is maybe, look, just be patient with maybe these few episodes here. It does get better than that, or something like that. Or a lot of shows take a few episodes to get running. That's just the thing. This is how television series work.
That's right. I also feel like, you can never watch it for the first time again. And they were written in the order or released in the order that they were for a reason. It's not necessarily true that, you're going to ruin it forever if you skip to the good parts, what you think are the good parts, but you're never going to have another chance to understand it organically for the first time. And I feel like there's something to be said for watching it how it was intended and not letting somebody else curate it for you based on their opinions about what's important. Like, how about the people who wrote it get to tell you that?
Then go on your own watch through. You can skip the episodes you don't like, or leave them running while you go and reheat your tacos or whatever.
I would like to reheat some tacos. There's always, every couple of months, there's another discussion on a message board or on Reddit or something about what should be the order to watch the important episodes, and everyone argues about it. But in seeing kind of the ways that people argue for these shortened versions, I understand that not everybody is going to be, number one, is going to become a super fan or is looking to become a super fan. And number two, I guess they're not looking necessarily for a comprehensive understanding of what's going on. They just want to be entertained. And I'm like, well, you know what? I can respect that too. You don't have to like it the way I like it.
Yeah, and I've learned even from doing this, there are episodes that people like, different people like more or less than others. Like between you and my other friend playing it safe, I found out that Catfinger is very much, some people like it and some people really don't episode.
It is a divisive episode.
I think we were probably up to recording episode 10 or so, and I was chatting to my other friend here, the one who got me into the show and into where we are now in the first place. And I said, we're up to it. She goes, oh, so you've seen Catfingers. What do you think?
What was your friend's opinion?
They were they didn't like it, but they were also hyper aware of, if you give the wrong opinion to the wrong person about that episode, then you could be in for trouble.
Yeah. One of my closest friends is always sort of disappointed that I'm not a big fan of cat fingers. I don't hate it, but as we've discussed, I'm so not into the body horror stuff. And my friend is like, "Oh, it's such a Stephen-y episode. It ends with puns, So true. It does end with puns.
Yeah, and we all know by now that it'll get some points back from me because of that awful just slamming you of wordplay at the end.
Steven gonna Steven.
But in the wider scheme of things, it's important because it brings in shape-shifting in a significant way.
Right, and implies that he has gem powers, but they don't work for him the way they're supposed to in a predictable fashion.
And really to lay in the Amethyst just does it like this whenever the heck she wants thing.
Yeah.
Though to be fair,
True.
that you could pick up pretty easily from later episodes when she does exactly that. So
Right. And even earlier, when the first time we see her do it, it's to pretend to be the dumb police and shoot Steven with a water gun.
yeah.
Oh, amethyst gonna amethyst.
Follow-up questions!
So what do you think about a probing question for this episode?
Oh, yeah. Let's see how I can be probed on this one.
I've got an idea for something I can probe you on that's for an episode like this, relatively deep. We were talking about, I guess, Steven trying to invent what is going on secretly behind what's going on with Garnet. Like, do you think that she's actively, intentionally keeping any secrets from him? Or do you think, she just hasn't fully realized she seems so mysterious to him, or, because that's her style or whatever?
I don't think she hasn't realized. I just think it's in her nature to be this way. I'm not sure it's a conscious position she takes. I think it's just how she is. So she doesn't feel bad that Stephen doesn't know what she gets up to. She just thinks he doesn't because she hasn't told him.
Right.
And as for why she went to, you tell me what I did, she could just be curious as to what he thinks, but it could be sly, or it could just be a distraction that... it could just be that she actually didn't do anything interesting that day, so had nothing to tell him. All we know is she came back with a bubble gem, and even the missions we've seen, some have been easier than others, and the other two were nowhere to be seen, so it wasn't too difficult one.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't think she's keeping things from people because that implies an active decision to withhold. I think she just doesn't tell things, and I think that's a difference. She's not so much lying by omission as omitting passively.
He's referred a couple of times to thinking that she's mysterious, and she just kind of, Beach Party, I'm talking about when she kind of giggled, mysterious. So, it's kind of like he sees this as a trait that he associates with her, and it's definitely consistent with her character, is that she's not forthcoming. She's not going to tell you any more than you need to know. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, unless there was a particular reason not to, which granted we don't know because we veered off into the chiptune fantasy, unless there's a particular reason not to, I think if it came to it, she would tell, but there is no reason to tell. And what does Stephen think I do all day was more fun a question.
Yeah.
We've seen that despite how she sometimes actually still enjoys fun, like Stephen Tag. So
yeah, so cute. Yeah, she is a particular kind of adorable sometimes. She can be very soft. The way that she interacts with Steven it's subtle, but it's very sweet, especially in an episode like this where you see their little interplay and you see these soft moments where she's telling him tiny hands are her only weakness.
Yes, I loved the way she delivered that line.
Too. And I know there was almost everything in this was a fantasy, but I also liked some of the voice acting where she was looking at the picture and saying, "Don't worry, Steve, I'll be home soon." Just this reassuring, sweet, soft tone that she had.
And also reflecting every other war movie where someone has a photo of their sweetheart in their pocket.
Right. It's just unforgivable that he turned it into an onion ring and ate it. The worst sin in the world. No, you dirty, dirty liar.
And speaking of, I did notice the brief appearance by the face of the person known as Onion in this one.
Enchanted power onion. And I guess we had to get all the food named people.
Yeah, and That's probably Stephen's. Stephen probably doesn't understand how onion works any more than I do.
You notice he doesn't get cast as a villain in this, though. So
No, maybe
probably because it would be very difficult to make a villain speech if you sound like.
And that'd be too close to ascribing regular human motivations to him.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we already know that he's an eldritch creature of some kind.
He's more a force of chaos than evil.
There we go. So like you said, we didn't really get any songs or anything, even though it would have been a nice adventure song opportunity. But we got a waterfall training montage, I think is the name of one of the backgrounds. And I don't know what the name of the one is where they fight, but I'm sure it has a name. You know, the chip tunes are cute.
And food-wise, we had onion rings.
We did. The onion rings was, in fact, my only recipe for this episode. And I dislike onions. I hate them.
Right there with you.
So I was reluctant to do this one. And it was a relatively recent one that I finally stooped to doing. And then I fed them to my friend. But I had some fun with them. And actually it was fun to do. Like, I had literally never chopped an onion in my life before I did this. So, and I talked to my sister about this after I had this experience. Okay, there were a couple of things that happened that surprised me. And one is that I got one of those onions that had more than one center in it. And I didn't know if that was normal. So I'm cutting it and I don't understand why the rings are not quite coming out perfectly. They came out okay for the first half. And in the second half, it started to become this mutant onion with two centers. And I'm like, what's going on here? I know I didn't do it wrong. But also I didn't cry. And I was ready to cry. I mean, I had an onion in my kitchen. So
the last time I did, I was chopping onions for someone else, and I only teared up in one eye, which was really weird.
Well, I shared my experience with my sister afterwards, and she said, number one, that she encounters multiple center onions all the time. And number two, that I was wearing my contact lenses. And she says, oh yeah, if you're wearing contact lenses, you won't cry. And I'm like, why? That doesn't make sense. But apparently it does.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought they covered the right parts, but
yeah, same here.
I'm no onionologist.
Yeah, well, I learned what I needed to learn for this. But yeah, I mean, I hate onions so intensely that hatred of onions is incorporated into my Wi-Fi password.
Oh, wow. Okay. Why'd go on that far?
I really don't like them.
But generally, if I make anything with onions in the recipe, I'll either bypass them, substitute them, or go, if you must, we're going to use onion powder instead.
That's what I do too. And I don't mind onion powder. I just don't like the texture of onions.
Yeah, very same.
Oh, wow. Definitely not in an onion ring because they're still very oniony inside of there. They don't cook down or anything.
Yeah. Well, it's a ring of onion. What are you going to do?
Yeah, it's even a little gross for me to watch somebody else eat it because it'll like start hanging out like a worm. And I'm like, ooh. But, you know, I like the way they smell and I like the way that they smell when they're cooking. So for my onion ring experience, I just did one onion and it made like 4 helpings of onion rings. So the way that I prepared it very quickly was I made a mixture of flour and baking powder. And there was one other dry ingredient, which I think it must have been salt. So I mixed those 3 together. And you need, oil and deep fryer and racks and stuff to put up on. But, you peel the onion, you cut it, and you hope that you don't get some kind of mutated onion with multiple centers like I did and, separate them into rings. I dusted them in that mixture first, the dry ingredients first to kind of coat them. And then to the remaining powder, I added, I think it was an egg and some milk. Yeah.
Something to bind
Something
to bind it, yeah.
Yeah. So I made this batter and then next to it had like a plate of breadcrumbs. So first I put the rings into the wet stuff and let them kind of drain a little bit and then ended up once they were a little bit firmer, like that it was stopped dripping on the racks, then I put them in the breadcrumbs and put them in the preheated hot oil and they became onion rings. And I found creative ways to serve them. When I put up the actual pictures of this in the video version of this podcast, you'll get to see some funny stuff where I had pictures of Garnet reacting to the onion ring and things like that, kind of propped up in the little cartons. Ringo turning it into an onion ring, or turning the picture into an onion ring. because otherwise it just looks like a bunch of onion rings and it doesn't look like it's related to a cartoon. So I have to dress up my food sometimes.
Yeah, you need props and characters.
Yeah. Sometimes I put my toys around things, and other times there's nothing that I can do to make it all that interesting. So I start drawing on index cards.
Yeah, I've seen it sometimes, the little figurines and things. And
yeah, it's fun. I like doing that. It makes it feel like, especially with the ones that aren't very show specific, like if you make together breakfast, you know what it is. Nobody mistakes that for some traditional dish. But if it's just a pile of onion rings, then
it's just onion rings. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely have had that problem with things like onions, popcorn, and things like that. Or the Greg breakfast from House Guest, I think it was, where I made the breakfast. It just looks like a regular breakfast. So, you got to put a dad in there or something.
If only I had known that.
Should I do some factoids?
Yep, let's do some factoids.
Well, you discovered one of them on your own because you heard who was doing the voices, so we already went over that. That's trivia. And we already talked about how one of them looks like Usagi.
She looks a lot like Miyamoto Usagi. So
yes, it seems like a direct reference to me. There's no way that can be a coincidence. Let's see. Did I say who the boarders were yet? I don't think I did. It was Jeff Liu and Joe Johnston, which is funny because they're usually like the ones who ends up handling most of the fights and stuff. So they got this episode. It's so funny. I think Jeff, it has a lot of video game influences, so that seems appropriate. What else? Oh yeah, there's the description. Let me find it. Description. Steven imagines what Garnet does with her day, which,
yeah,
that's exactly what we just saw.
That's what happened. There's not a lot of twists to go around in this episode. I mean, I guess maybe they could have spoiled the Ringo is really a bad guy thing, but that would actually take some doing in terms of writing a summary to do that.
Yes. I think with that one, if I had read it before I watched the episode, I wouldn't have been as excited for it. And I'll be honest, I was a little bit let down that we didn't get to find out any real stuff that goes on with Garnet, because I was hoping for some insight into her, because I was already past the point where I'm like, I think she's my favorite character and I want to know more about what makes her tick. But, as we've discussed, part of her appeal is that you don't know that much about what's going on. So there's this stoicism that's very intriguing about her. But, I was hoping for kind of a payoff, and really all I got was a sweet interaction and Steven's imagination. So, yeah, this is something I don't care that much about. But another factoid is that Jeff Liu, who worked on the episode, said that the fighting was influenced by an anime, which is, I guess, what was it? Oh, I've heard it referenced a few times. Gurren Lagann, I think it's called.
I only know its title, and that's I wouldn't have spotted that.
Epic fights. I don't know. I don't remember if I had said it at the time, but I think I remember that one of the fights in the Ocean Gem episode, when they were fighting their mirrors, when they were fighting their water clones, was influenced by that too, but I can't be sure. I think I remember that, but they're influenced by a lot of classic anime, so I don't know how classic that is. Oh, and obviously the mountains with faces, one of them that got punched by Garnet to show her strength, look very Super Mario.
Oh, yeah. I did feel sorry for that little mountain looking alarmed as his head got punched off.
Yeah. I wonder if that one can start a new life somehow.
Maybe the gang can put the head back on and it seals back up. Yeah.
We talked about the influences from Dragon Ball, but I think I didn't mention, I made a reference to how the hair thing happens with the Super Saiyans, but I think there's one more thing where, being that I haven't watched it, I don't know for sure how this goes, but there's something about weighted clothes or a weighted cape or something in Dragon Ball, where I think it was a character named Piccolo that takes a weighted cape, and it's really dramatic that he's been training with these weighted clothes or something like that.
I felt something was being referenced, but it still kind of works because, weightlifting, that sort of thing. But I got the idea there was something specific being alluded to, but I couldn't work out what.
Yeah. If I remember properly, that I think that maybe two people were fighting, and both of them, I think it turned out they had weighted stuff and took it off.
Brand spanking new, mint in box.
I don't think I have anything else besides merch.
Let's see the merch.
Okay. So believe it or not, I struggled with this one because I was thinking, what kind of Garnet related stuff can I show you? And I'm running out of stuff that it's safe to show you with her. So I decided to show you that there is an official Yahtzee game.
Oh.
for Steven Universe. And you know how the special ones will sometimes have like a fancy customized like dice roller that you can keep the game in, the travel version? It's a Garnet gauntlet.
Oh, okay. That is cool. Oh, I like that.
Side of the Garnet gauntlet. And I'm opening it for those who cannot see the picture I will probably put up on the YouTube video. Let's see. The thing comes off. And inside is the whole game. So there is a scoring sheet inside of this gauntlet. And they have also customized dice that have the characters on them. Let's see if I can do this without making too much noise. So all of the dice have multiple sides. I don't know if I can show this to you properly, but I can try to show it on the screen. There's a Steven on number 1, and there's a cute little Connie for number 2. Who's number 3? I think it's Pearl.
Yeah, we can say Pearl.
Pearl. Amethyst. Let's see. 5 and 6. 5 is Garnet, and 6 is Greg.
Ah, hey, Greg.
So I have a whole gauntlet thing full of dice and rules. And what's cool is I am small enough to put my hand inside of this.
Oh, that is cool.
No, it's not backwards. Okay, so I happen to be small enough that I can put the whole dice roller on my hand and have a mini Garnet gauntlet.
Oh, that is so awesome.
That's my favorite thing about it. I don't even want to play Yahtzee, but it is really, you drink out of this.
Yeah.
So that's my merch.
Yeah.
Now you've seen it.
Yeah, I similarly, I won the Doctor Who, stop that, yeah, I won the Doctor Who Yahtzee set once, and it's got similar things with various aliens and characters for the dice faces, and the roller thing, which will surprise no one, is the TARDIS.
Oh, that's cute.
And I haven't played it either.
Okay.
Oh, and we're back.
All right. We got interrupted.
But yeah, I've got the Doctor Who one and haven't played it either. Hold on. Just for completeness, I'll show it off.
I want to see it. I want to see this TARDIS.
Just for the sake of Yahtzee indulgence.
Ooh, that seems bigger than mine.
Yeah, I think part of it is because mine's still in the package.
Mm-hmm.
So
is that supposed to be like for rolling the dice?
Yeah.
Wow. It seems like it's bigger. It's cool.
Yep. There's the picture of it rolling the dice.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I see. That's cool. I like that. It is neat.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I won it in a quiz, and at the time it hadn't actually been properly released yet. So.
Oh, that's neat. I like that. Was it Doctor Who?
So it remained as a display thing.
Was it Doctor Who quiz, like trivia?
Oh, yeah. So
you're a master.
That was a fun little evening.
You're a Time Lord. I'm impressed. All right. Anything else you want to talk about with Garnets Universe?
No, I think we've covered it. It's strangeness. It's using its own actors as guest actors. It's animation and music.
Yes, and food. Onions. Ringo.
Onions. Yep.
Well, I think we probably will not have to deal with actual onions again. Just the person. All right. Well, let's.
I don't have to taste him.
Yeah,
I just have to see and hear him.
No, you don't actually have to. Well, if you're putting him in your mouth, there's a problem. Well, that sounds like a good note to wrap this up on. Leave people with that visual.
You'll think about licking onion or whatever. Until next time.
Thanks for listening. Bye. You've been listening to Ivy and Daria on Not So Giant Women.
You can find episodes of the show in video form by looking up Not So Giant Women on YouTube.
Or in audio form at anchor.fm/Not So Giant Women or your podcatcher of choice. You can also find us on Facebook.
Audio production by Daria.
Video production and music by Ivy.
Daria can also be heard on Podsploitation, the Ozploitation podcast.
And Ivy at her Steven Universe fan blog at love-takes-work.tumblr.com.
Steven Universe was created by Rebecca Sugar and remains property of Cartoon Network.
No infringement is intended.